Close your eyes, dear listener. Let the noise of the day melt away. Allow each breath to slow, like a soft breeze drifting through ancient ruins. Tonight, we set sail to Samurai of the Eternal Moon. Long before the rise of mighty shoguns, before the clang of steel echoed across the valleys of war, Japan was a land of whispers. Mountains loomed like sleeping gods, forests murmured with the voices of unseen spirits, and the sea stretched vast and endless, a mirror for the sky. The people lived between two worlds, one of men and one of kami, the divine forces that dwelled in wind, water, and stone. At night, when the moon spilled silver across the land, those two realms touched, and it was said that under her light a man might glimpse his destiny. So begins the tale of Masanori. Born in a village that no longer exists, erased by fire and blood during the endless wars of the Sengoku Jidai, Masanori's first memory was of loss. He was but a boy when the flames consumed his home. Soldiers from rival clans clashed in the night, their banners snapping like thunder, their swords singing through the smoke. By dawn, nothing remained but ash, silence, and the pale light of the moon watching overhead. It was under that same moon that Masanori swore his first vow, not to a lord, nor to vengeance, but to survival. He wandered alone, a child among ruins, until fate brought him to the temple of wandering monks. There, amid chants and incense, he grew. They taught him letters, sutras, and the way of stillness. But within him burned a hunger that no prayer could calm, the memory of steel flashing in firelight, of warriors who shaped the world with their blades. One monk, old Riku, saw this restlessness in the boy's eyes. He gave Masanori not sermons, but a wooden sword. "Steel is not given but earned," Riku said. "The path of the warrior is not found in books, it is carved into the soul." And so Masanori began to walk that path. He grew strong, his strikes swift as a hawk's dive, his spirit tempered like iron in flame. Yet his heart remained restless, as though waiting for something more. One night, as he trained alone beneath the full moon, a shadow moved across the courtyard stones. Masanori stilled. From the shrine beyond came a glow, faint as breath, soft as the silver dust that falls from heaven. There, standing in silence, was a woman clad in robes of pale light. Her eyes shone like the endless sky. In her hands she carried no weapon, only the serenity of eternity. Masanori dropped to one knee, for he knew no mortal priestess could shine so. "You carry the mark of the moon," she whispered, her voice like wind over water. "And one day you will be called to her service." Before Masanori could speak, the figure dissolved into silver mist, rising toward the heavens until only the moon remained, vast, eternal, watching. From that night, the boy's fate was sealed. He was no longer simply Masanori. He was chosen. The blade he would carry would cut not only through flesh and steel, but through the veil that separates man from spirit, history from myth. And when war came again, as it always did, the moon would test her servant. For under her eternal light, No oath is ever broken.
Japan, 15th century. A land divided, torn apart by ambition. The emperor sat cloistered in Kyoto, a distant figurehead. The Ashikaga shoguns, once strong, had become shadows of power. Across the provinces, daimyo warlords rose like storm clouds, each hungering for dominion. Armies marched, castles burned, and the common folk prayed only to see another dawn. This was the Sengoku Jidai, the age of warring states.
Japan, 15th century. A land divided, torn apart by ambition. The emperor sat cloistered in Kyoto, a distant figurehead. The Ashikaga shoguns, once strong, had become shadows of power. Across the provinces, daimyo warlords rose like storm clouds, each hungering for dominion. Armies marched, castles burned, and the common folk prayed only to see another dawn. This was the Sengoku Jidai, the age of warring states. Amid this chaos walked Masanori. No longer a boy, he had grown lean and tall, his movements honed by years of training. He wore no crest, swore to no lord. His only possessions were a traveler's pack, a simple blade, and the wooden prayer beads given by monk Riku before he set forth from the temple. The road was endless and dangerous. Bandits roamed the forests. Mercenaries hunted coin more eagerly than honor. And soldiers in strange armor passed by in columns, their banners snapping in the wind. Yet Masanori did not shy away. He sought the way of the warrior not as a servant, but as a seeker. Each night he practiced by moonlight, his strikes precise, his spirit unyielding. Each morning he watched the smoke of distant battles rise against the sky. One autumn, Masanori stumbled upon the aftermath of slaughter. Fields once golden with rice were trampled in red. Corpses lay scattered, banners fallen in the mud. Ravens circled overhead, their cries harsh in the silence. As he walked among the dead, a faint groan reached his ears. Beneath a shattered cart lay a man in armor, his crest marking him a retainer of the Oda clan, a rising power in the central provinces. The man's chest was pierced, his life fading, yet his eyes burned with defiance. "You there, boy, take my blade," he rasped. Masanori knelt. The weapon was no ordinary sword. Its lacquered scabbard was black as night, its hilt wrapped in crimson cord. The steel shimmered faintly in the moonlight that filtered through storm clouds. "Swear to wield it with honor," he gasped. Then his breath left him, and his eyes stilled. Masanori bowed deeply. He lifted the katana with reverence. In that moment, the moon broke free from the clouds, bathing the field in silver light. It was as though the heavens themselves bore witness to the oath unspoken that this blade would serve not warlords, but something greater. Not long after, Masanori's path crossed that of raiders, mercenaries hired to scour villages for supplies. They mocked the lone traveler, laughing at his simple garb and temple beads. "Another monk's dog," one jeered, drawing his spear. "Hand over your pack, or bleed for the crows." Masanori stood silent. The moon hung high above, casting the earth in pale glow. He drew the black-sheathed katana, its edge flashing like liquid silver. The raiders lunged. Steel clashed. Sparks burst. Masanori's blade moved as though guided by unseen hands. Each strike flowed like water. Each step aligned with the rhythm of the moonlight. One by one, the mercenaries fell, their laughter swallowed by silence. When the last man dropped to his knees trembling, Masanori lowered his sword. He did not kill the survivor. Instead, he spoke. "Remember the moon's mercy. Take your life back to your clan, and never again prey on the weak." The man fled, vanishing into the night. Masanori stood alone beneath the stars, his breath steady, his heart alight with a strange certainty. Word of the moonlit warrior began to spread. Travelers spoke of a lone samurai who carried no banner, who struck down bandits with impossible grace, whose blade gleamed with silver fire. Some called him a spirit, others a masterless ronin, but all agreed his presence was an omen, and omens reached ears both mortal and divine. In Kyoto, rumors drifted to court. In Owari province, the rising daimyo Oda Nobunaga heard whispers of a swordsman with the strength of 100 men. And in the forests, beneath the shrines, yokai stirred. Spirits awoke from slumber, drawn by the echo of the moon's chosen, walking once more beneath her light. On a winter night, Masanori found himself at a forgotten shrine deep in the mountains. Snow blanketed the ground, and the only sound was the crunch of his sandals upon the path. At the altar stood a woman in crimson and white, her form bathed in moonlight. She turned as he approached, her gaze calm, her presence both human and divine. "I am Lady Aiko," she said softly, bowing her head, "priestess of the moon." Masanori felt the air still, as though the world itself listened. "The goddess has chosen you," Aiko continued. "Your blade is not meant for lords nor glory. It is meant to guard the balance between men and spirits. Darkness rises, Masanori, and only the eternal moon can light the way." Masanori lowered his head, his grip tightening on the hilt of his sword. For the first time, he understood the weight of his destiny. Thus began the legend of the Samurai of the Eternal Moon. The mountains slept in silence, snow shimmering beneath the pale moon. Masanori lingered at the forgotten shrine where Lady Aiko had spoken of destiny. Her words clung to him like incense smoke, impossible to shake. "Guard the balance between men and spirits." He left the shrine with the weight of the goddess's blessing pressing upon his shoulders, yet he did not yet understand what it meant. That night, the answer came. The path wound through cedar trees heavy with frost. The air grew colder, the silence thicker. Then came a sound, a faint tapping like claws on bark. Masanori's hand fell to his sword. From the shadows, figures emerged. At first glance, they seemed men, armored warriors with spears and long, ragged banners. But as the moonlight touched them, their faces rippled, revealing twisted beaks and burning eyes. Their movements were too sharp, too jerking, like puppets tugged by unseen strings. Tengu, bird demons of the mountains, tricksters, warriors, and harbingers of chaos. The largest among them stepped forward, its wings unfurled with a rustle that shook the trees. In its clawed hands it carried a naginata that gleamed like frozen lightning. "You carry the moon's mark, mortal. The night belongs to us. Leave this place, or your blood will feed the roots." Masanori bowed his head slightly, as a samurai should, even to a demon. Then he drew his blade. The black sheath whispered as silver steel slid free. The moonlight caught the edge, glowing faintly as though alive. The Tengu laughed, a sound like breaking bones. With a screech, it lunged. Steel and claw collided. Sparks burst into the night. Masanori stepped fluidly, his strikes a dance of precision, each movement flowing into the next. Yet the Tengu's strength was monstrous, each blow driving him back through the snow. Around them, the other Tengu circled, their eyes glowing. Masanori's breath fogged in the icy air. His heart thundered, but his mind remained calm. The moon watches, the moon guides. He shifted his stance, the teachings of Monk Riku echoing in memory. The warrior's heart is stillness. The blade is only an extension of the soul. The Tengu lunged again. This time, Masanori moved with the moon, not against it. His sword arced like silver water, and the demon's spear shattered in half.
The creature shrieked, its form unraveling, but Masanori did not relent. With one final strike, he cut clean through its chest. Instead of blood, light spilled out, white, radiant, blinding. The Tengu dissolved into mist, scattering into the night like smoke. The others froze, their shrieks faltering. One by one, they melted into shadow, fleeing into the forest until only silence remained. Masanori stood alone, his breath heavy, his blade dripping with faint silver light that vanished as quickly as it came. He looked down at the weapon, realization dawning. This was no ordinary sword. It was the moon's blade, and he was its chosen hand. Snow whispered as a figure stepped from the trees. Lady Aiko, the moon priestess, emerged, her robes untouched by frost. "You have faced the first trial," she said softly. "Now you know the truth. The yokai are stirring. Boundaries weaken. Soon the world of men and the world of spirits will collide." Masanori sheathed his blade. His eyes, once restless, now burned with clarity. "What must I do?" "You must walk between them," Aiko replied. "Neither servant of men nor slave of demons. A sword of balance. The eternal moon will guide you, but the choice will always be yours." She stepped closer, her gaze unflinching. "And remember this. Every gift has a cost. The moon's power is eternal, but eternity is a lonely path." Masanori bowed deeply, his oath unspoken yet undeniable. He would walk this path, no matter where it led. Above, the full moon shone brighter, as though sealing the vow. Far away, across the provinces, warlords sharpened their blades. Oda Nobunaga gathered power in Owari, his armies swelling like rivers in flood. Rival clans plotted, alliances formed and shattered, and blood painted the rice fields. But beyond mortal wars, darker forces stirred. In hidden valleys, Oni gathered. In mountain shrines, ancient seals cracked. The age of men and spirits colliding had begun. And at its center stood one man, Masanori, the samurai of the eternal moon. The winter passed, and with spring came smoke. Villages burned, rivers choked with corpses, and armies marched like endless waves. The Sengoku Jidai showed no mercy. Masanori, now whispered of as the moonlit Ronin,
wandered from province to province. To villagers he was a protector, to bandits a nightmare. Yet to the daimyo lords he was a question, and questions bred suspicion. One evening, Masanori entered a valley village already in ruin. The air reeked of smoke and iron, the ground littered with broken spears. Ash drifted like snow, coating the burned huts. In the center stood a woman, clutching her child, her eyes wide with terror. Around her, soldiers in lacquered armor laughed cruelly, their banners bearing the crest of the Takeda clan. "Another rat for the fire?" one sneered, raising his spear. Masanori's blade slid free with a whisper. Moonlight glinted upon steel. The soldiers turned, laughter dying in their throats. What followed was swift and merciless. Masanori's strikes were clean, not of rage, but of precision. Each movement carved silence into the chaos, until only one soldier remained, trembling, his spear clattering to the ground. "Tell your master," Masanori said coldly, "that the moon watches even in war." The man fled. The villagers bowed deeply, whispering prayers of thanks. But Masanori knew mercy was temporary. War would return.
Not long after, Masanori's deeds reached ears that should never have heard them. In the fortress of Kai province, Lord Daichi sat upon a throne of blackened wood. His armor was crimson, his helm adorned with horns. Some said he was more demon than man, a warlord who bargained with the underworld for victory. A servant knelt before him, recounting the tale of the moonlit Ronin. Daichi's lips curled into a smile. A warrior who strikes like silver fire, who carries no banner. How dangerous. How useful. He rose, his presence suffocating the chamber. Bring him to me, alive if possible, dead if not. Masanori traveled through a mountain pass when the trap was sprung. Arrows rained from the cliffs. Soldiers in crimson armor poured from the rocks, blades flashing. He drew his sword, the moonlight catching its edge even in daylight. The clash was brutal, steel on steel, cries echoing against stone walls. Masanori moved like a shadow, but numbers pressed hard. At last, a spear struck his shoulder, driving him to one knee. Blood darkened his robe. From the ranks stepped a towering figure clad in horned armor, not Lord Daichi himself, but his general, Akihiro, known as the Crimson Wolf. "You fight well for a Ronin, but you are no match for Daichi's might. Kneel, and perhaps you'll live." Masanori's grip tightened on his blade. His vision blurred, but the moon's presence steadied him. He rose slowly, defiance burning in his gaze. "I kneel only to the eternal moon." With a roar, Akihiro lunged. Their blades clashed in a storm of sparks, the mountain pass echoing with the fury of their duel.
Just as the Crimson Wolf pressed Masanori to the edge, the sky darkened. Clouds rolled in, though no storm had been foretold. A wind howled through the pass, and from the shadows stepped Lady Aiko, her crimson and white robes fluttering like fire and snow. Her voice rang out like a bell. "The moon claims her champion. Begone, servants of false lords." A light spilled across the battlefield, silver and blinding. The soldiers cried out, shielding their eyes. Even Akihiro faltered, his blade trembling. When the light faded, Masanori stood renewed, his wound closed and his sword blazing with pale fire. With one final strike, he shattered Akihiro's weapon, sending him staggering. The Crimson Wolf fell to his knees, clutching the broken hilt. Rage twisted his face, but fear trembled in his eyes. "This is not the end," he spat, retreating into the shadows with his men. When silence returned, Masanori turned to Lady Aiko. "They will not stop," he said. "The warlords see me as weapon or threat. Either way, blood will follow." Aiko's eyes softened with sorrow. "You cannot escape the tides of war, Masanori, but you can choose how to stand within them. The moon gives you strength, but men will demand allegiance. Remember, every path has its cost." Masanori looked up at the night sky breaking through the storm, the moon's glow piercing the clouds. He whispered, more to himself than to her, "Then I will carve a path of my own." The legend of the samurai of the eternal moon grew, no longer only among peasants and wanderers, but whispered in the courts of daimyo and feared in the camps of soldiers. A storm was coming, not only of men, but of spirits, and Masanori now stood at the heart of both. The mountains slept uneasily after the battle with the Crimson Wolf. Yet Masanori found no rest. Each village he passed carried the same tale: fields burned, rice stolen, men conscripted, women and children scattered like leaves in the wind. The culprit was always the same: Lord Daichi. But there were whispers now of something more. Soldiers who did not bleed when cut, shadows that walked with human armies, and a lord whose eyes glowed red when the moon rose high. Far to the east, in a valley shrouded in mist, stood Daichi's fortress. Its towers rose like fangs against the night sky, its walls blackened as though scorched by fire. Within, Lord Daichi knelt before an altar of obsidian. Candles guttered in the stale air. Upon the altar rested a mask, crimson lacquer, tusks curling, eyes hollow yet burning with inner fire. And Oni's visage. A voice echoed from the mask, low and thunderous. "Your armies bleed, Daichi. Your enemies gather. Yet with my pact you shall not fall." Daichi's lips curved into a grim smile. "Grant me strength, and the land will bow. Even the moon's champion will kneel." He pressed his hands into the altar. Flames burst upward, swallowing the chamber in red light. The pact was sealed. Days later, Masanori arrived at a riverside village. The people cowered in silence, their eyes hollow, their prayers desperate. He asked what plagued them, and an elder spoke. "They came, soldiers with no souls, eyes like burning coals. They take our rice, our sons, our daughters. We begged the gods for mercy. Only the moon answered." Masanori's jaw tightened. This was no longer war. This was desecration. That night, he sat at the river's edge, his sword across his knees. The moon's reflection shimmered on the water, silver and still. Lady Aiko appeared beside him, her presence soft as falling snow. "The Oni's pact has been forged," she warned. "Lord Daichi draws upon powers not meant for men. His soldiers are shadows bound in flesh. If his reach spreads, the balance will shatter." Masanori looked to the stars, his grip steady. "Then I will cut the pact at its root." The attack came sooner than expected. Drums thundered in the distance, and the village awoke to chaos. Crimson-armored soldiers marched through the mist, their eyes glowing faintly. Behind them strode a monstrous figure, a man, yet not a man. 7 feet tall, his flesh twisted with black scars, his helm fused with horns. His voice was a guttural growl, thick with smoke. "I am Kuregane, bound by Daichi's will. This land belongs to him. Surrender the moon's champion, and your lives may yet be spared." Villagers whimpered, clutching their children. Masanori stepped forward, his blade gleaming silver in the torchlight. "You will find me here," he said. Kuregane's laughter shook the ground. "So be it." Steel clashed against iron flesh. Masanori's blade sang, each strike guided by the moon's light. Yet the Oni's hide was like stone, his blows like thunder. Each clash sent shockwaves rippling through the earth. The villagers watched in terror as the two titans fought, sparks flying with every strike. Masanori's breath grew ragged, his shoulders searing from each near miss. At last, Kurogane raised his massive blade, bringing it down in a strike meant to shatter mountains. Masanori rolled aside, the ground splitting where he had stood. Then he remembered Lady Aiko's words, "The moon gives strength, but you must open yourself to her light." He closed his eyes for but a moment, letting the moon above guide his spirit. When his eyes opened again, his katana blazed with silver fire. With a cry, Masanori struck upward. His katana sliced through the Oni's chest, cutting not flesh, but the dark pact that bound him. Kurogane froze, eyes wide. The crimson glow faded. For a heartbeat, the man beneath the monster looked at Masanori with weary relief. Then he crumbled into ash, scattered on the river's wind. Silence fell. The villagers stared in awe, their fear replaced with reverence. Some knelt, whispering prayers to the moon. Others wept with gratitude. But Masanori did not celebrate. He looked to the horizon, where smoke still rose. For every Oni slain, there would be another pact, another warlord, another corruption. Lady Aiko's voice carried to him on the wind. This is only the beginning. Lord Daichi's hunger grows, and he is not the only one who courts the darkness. Masanori sheathed his blade, his expression solemn. Then let the moon's light shine wherever the darkness spreads. Above, the full moon broke free from the clouds, its silver glow bathing the river. For a moment, all was still, as though the heavens themselves acknowledged the vow.
The smoke of war thickened across Japan. Villages fell like stalks of rice before the sickle, and banners of rival daimyo clashed in endless fields. But among them all, one name rose higher each day: Oda Nobunaga. His armies marched with iron discipline. His muskets thundered louder than the cries of traditionalists. To his allies, he was the dawn of a new age. To his enemies, he was a demon in human flesh. And now, whispers of a lone samurai blessed by the moon reached his ears. Masanori found himself summoned by messengers bearing Nobunaga's crest. At first he refused.
yet their words carried a weight impossible to ignore. Our Lord does not ask, he commands. He traveled to Azuchi Castle, rising above Lake Biwa like a dragon of stone. Nobunaga's court bustled with warriors, merchants, and priests, all drawn to the gravity of his ambition. Inside the grand hall, Nobunaga himself sat upon the dais, his gaze sharp as a hawk's, his presence filling the chamber. "You are the one they call the moonlit Ronin," Nobunaga said, his voice smooth yet edged with steel. "Your blade cuts not only men, but monsters. Tell me, do you fight for coin, for honor, or merely for the whispers of peasants?" Masanori bowed, neither humble nor defiant. "I fight for balance. Where men or spirits bring harm, my blade answers." Nobunaga laughed, like fire crackling on dry wood. "Balance? The world is not balanced, Ronin. It is chaos, and I will shape it into order." His eyes narrowed. "Stand with me, and your blade will carve history itself. Refuse, and you may find yourself swept aside, as so many others have been." Not all in Nobunaga's retinue welcomed Masanori. Among his generals was Akechi Mitsuhide, thoughtful and cautious, who watched Masanori with wary eyes. "This Ronin carries the stench of superstition," Mitsuhide murmured during council. "A samurai guided by the moon is no ally but an omen." Others disagreed. The young General Hideyoshi saw in Masanori a weapon too valuable to waste. "If demons stalk the land, would it not be wise to keep such a man close rather than risk him against us?" Nobunaga listened, silent as the night. At last he turned to Masanori. "You will march with us," he declared. "Prove yourself in battle, not against peasants or yokai, but against men. Let me see if your blade shines in daylight as it does beneath the moon." The chance came sooner than expected. The Imagawa clan marched against Oda with overwhelming numbers, their banners blotting out the horizon. Nobunaga, outnumbered, chose to strike with cunning. He led a surprise assault through storm and mud, his men crashing into the enemy camp like thunder. Masanori fought at the front lines, his blade flashing silver even beneath storm clouds. He cut through Imagawa spearmen, not with reckless fury, but with precise, flowing strikes. Soldiers swore the storm itself bent around him, lightning guiding his movements. When the battle ended, Imagawa Yoshimoto lay dead, his army shattered. Oda Nobunaga's star blazed brighter than ever, and whispers spread faster still. The moonlit samurai had stood among Nobunaga's men.
That night, as the Oda celebrated victory, Masanori sat apart beneath the moon. Lady Aiko appeared once more, her expression troubled. "You walk now among men who seek conquest, not balance. Nobunaga's flame will burn bright, but it may also consume all it touches. Even the moon cannot guide you if you give your path away to another's ambition." Masanori's gaze lingered on the castle torches flickering in the distance. "I do not fight for Nobunaga. I fight for what the moon commands. If his path aligns, then so be it. But when it strays into darkness, I will stand against him." Aiko's eyes softened, though sorrow remained. "Then know this, every bond with men is fragile, and when it breaks, it may shatter more than armies." Back in Kai province, Lord Daiichi's fury deepened. The Oni pact had cost him a general, but not his ambition.
In secret, he forged new alliances, whispering promises to other daimyo who feared Oda's growing power. And in the hidden places of the world, yokai stirred restlessly. The boundary between realms grew thinner with each pact forged in blood. Two storms now gathered, one of men, one of spirits. And Masanori, samurai of the eternal moon, stood between them both.
Years passed, and Japan bled without end. Nobunaga's star blazed higher, his conquests swallowing provinces like fire consumes dry grass. Yet beyond mortal struggles, the shadows deepened. Lord Daichi, swollen with power from darker pacts, summoned his armies one final time. Not only men, but yokai bound in chains of blood, oni with burning eyes, wraiths that screamed in silence, and soldiers who no longer breathed. His aim was simple: break Oda Nobunaga's rise and claim Japan for himself, a land where demons and men marched as one. The battlefield chosen was a plain beneath a blood-red moon, and Masanori stood at its center. On one side, Oda's disciplined ranks, muskets and spears braced against the tide. On the other, Daichi's horde, a nightmare spilling from legend. The earth trembled as the armies collided. Steel clashed, fire roared, spirits howled. Men screamed as yokai tore through them, and demons fell to volleys of gunfire. Through it all, Masanori cut a path of silver fire. His blade danced, severing both flesh and spirit. Soldiers rallied where he strode, whispering his name as though he were no longer man, but a divine protector. At last, the battlefield parted. From the chaos emerged Lord Daichi, towering in crimson armor, fused with the horns of an oni. His eyes glowed with infernal light, his blade dripping with black fire. "So," he thundered, "the moon's dog stands before me. Tonight your light dies, and Japan bows to shadow." Masanori raised his sword, its silver glow steady beneath the blood moon. "Tonight the balance is restored." They clashed. The earth shook beneath each strike. Fire and light erupted as black flame met silver radiance. Daichi's strength was monstrous, his blows meant to crush mountains. Masanori moved with the moon's grace, each strike flowing, each step aligned with something greater than himself. The battle raged across the plain, sparks scattering like stars, shadows colliding with light. At last, Daichi drove Masanori to his knees. The warlord's laughter boomed triumphant. "You cannot stand against eternity, Ronin! Darkness is endless!" But Masanori lifted his eyes to the sky. The blood-red moon shimmered, then broke three, its silver glow piercing the night, washing the battlefield in light. Lady Aiko's voice echoed, not in his ears, but in his soul. "The moon does not grant eternity to men, Masanori, but it grants eternity to deeds." Strength flooded him, not rage, but clarity. He rose, his blade blazing like liquid moonlight. With one final cry, he struck. His sword cleaved through Daichi's blade, through his armor, through the very pact that bound him. The warlord's scream shook the heavens, then his body burst into ash, his shadow consumed by the moon's radiance. Silence fell. The yokai dissolved into mist, freed from Daichi's chains. The battlefield stilled. Oda Nobunaga stood upon the plain, his eyes fixed on Masanori. For a moment, the warlord who sought to conquer Japan bowed his head not in subservience, but in acknowledgement. Yet Masanori did not linger. He sheathed his sword and walked away into the night. Years passed. Nobunaga rose and fell. Hideyoshi, then Ieyasu, carried the dream of unification. History remembered their names. But in the quiet places, mountain shrines, villages where rice swayed in the wind, riverbanks bathed in moonlight, whispers told another tale. Of a lone samurai who bore no banner, of a blade that gleamed with silver fire, of a warrior who stood between men and spirits, never seeking glory, only balance. Some said he still walked the mountains. Others swore they had seen him upon battlefields long after his mortal body should have turned to dust. And when the moon shone full, travelers spoke of a figure upon the ridges, tall, calm, sword at his side, the samurai of the eternal moon.